Okay, guys, so we are jumping just for your basic exposure on some clauses of ISO 9001 2015. I do not want you to go too far and too deep because it can be confusing, so I summarize things that I think is important for your knowledge. So recently we have COVID-19 issues, and sometimes you see the news written here. People are starting to doubt whether the thermometers actually are being useful to measure the temperatures. In this particular news, May 27, they say temperatures go haywire due to faulty thermometers or giving improper reading. So people who are sick actually being allowed into the mall. So this is an example how why this clause 7.1.5 monitoring and measuring resources is important, because it concerned about the instrument being used for recording, for monitoring, for measurement of food quality. So we have done clause 4. Basically it's on components of a process. We know from inputs, and then we have criteria and methods, responsibility, and then we have outputs, etc. So during any process of any production, whether it is food or non-food material, there must be a lot of measurement. People use all kind of instruments. For us in food technology, we use a lot of weighing machine. in our labs, in the QC control labs, maybe we have lots of pH meter. Some companies, some product require the use of balance, analytical balance, or moisture meter. Very high end labs, they have to use like things like HPLC or GC. So this is all very high end kind of productions. In canning we use this. It's a vacuum gauge. You can measure the vacuum to determine whether the particular process of can production was sufficient to produce specific measures of vacuum inside the can. So we understand the process 1, process 2, process 3 from the suppliers. Process number 1, probably receiving and mixing. Here you have the 3-in-1 coffee, and then you go into process number 2, which is filling into the sachet, and finally process number 3, which is packaging. So what ISO 9001, this particular clause, require us to do is for us to monitor these 4 things. One is called the products, that include say the raw materials arrive. This is the in process, this is the finished product. So you must take the sample here, and here, and you have to do the some kind of measurements in order for you to monitor the process. Second, the environment itself. In this case, probably you need to monitor the relative humidity, because when you do perform mixing of this 3-in-1 coffee, it is going to be exposed to the atmosphere. Therefore, the chances of getting moisture ingress is there. So you have to control the relative humidity, and you have to monitor that RH being maintained at the right kind of measurement kind of value. Or maybe you even have to monitor the temperatures. It must be proper temperature, not exceeding certain value. Number 3, the process itself has to be monitored. So we transform the raw materials into in process 1, and then in process 1 output become the input of process number 2. They produce the product there. So you must have some kind of specification for this process, and you measure the process to make sure that you fulfill the criteria, the specified parameters. We call it specifications. It could be a measurement of flow rate, speed, accuracy, efficiency of production, or pressure, temperature, the rate of feeding, inlet and outlet temperature, etc., depending on your process. Finally, while we are measuring the products, monitoring the environment and monitoring the process, we must also monitor the instrument that we use to monitor product, environment and process. So the measuring instrument itself have to be monitored. For instance, I give an example here. If you want to monitor measuring instrument like a pH meter here, what you normally use, definitely you have to use some kind of buffer solution, pH 4 and pH 7. So by doing so, we can be assured that that pH meter is really doing its job. So it is kind of calibrations, and you can say sometimes it is verification between calibration. So what the standard, you can recall, this is the standard 9001 2015. We are talking about 7.1.5 somewhere here, and this particular clause is about support. Yeah, so we want to support the operation, which is the production. In order to do that, we have to monitor the processes, and partly we are talking now is about the instrument that we use for measurement of the parameters during process. So the main question here when you are talking about instrument is whether it is suitable and does it fit for the purpose. Yeah. So suitability is about selecting the correct monitoring or measuring resource. You must choose the right instrument capable of making the measurement required and have a resolution to detect the increment sought. So before you decide to purchase a particular instrument, you have to really study your process, what kind of values that important to the process, and therefore what kind of specification of this instrument that you should consider. Number 2 is fitness for the purpose. So it requires maintaining the instrument in a way that preserves the ability to make measurements. So this word that should be familiar for you who work in the QC lab: calibration, verification, preventive maintenance, breakdown, maintenance and repair, visual inspection, automatic replacement after a defined time frame, repeatability, reproducibility studies, statistical analysis of measuring variation, etc. So depending on the how critical this instrument use, you have to decide whether it is calibration that you need to do, whether it is preventive maintenance. So all of this depending on the particular process and particular instrument. So we are very familiar with calibration because that is what the previous standards talk about. It's all about calibrations in order to ensure fitness for purpose. Sometimes the measurement of moisture given by the particular instrument was so low, so you're not sure whether the moisture meter actually doing a good job, so you calibrate it just to be sure. But now in this particular standard we have many more options. So you must analyze the instrument, understand how they operate, and determine what process will best indicate fitness for purpose. Say like simple tools like tape measurements, some kind of rulers. Maybe you can just visually inspect it, say maybe every 6 months for visual damage, etc. If there is just a small indication of tear, wear, bends, cut, etc., that requires no replacement, Yes, nothing to be done there, but you have to record the observation and you have to retain the information. So you have your evidence of check. So the auditors are convinced that you actually check or inspected visually of this simple equipment or instrument. However, certain other instruments like metal sieve being used in the flour manufacturing, this sieve determine the size of the flour. So the suppliers in this case give some kind of guarantees that the sieve is fit for a purpose or remain accurate if you replace it every December for at least to remain accurate for at least 2 years. So you do the as recommended by the supplier, unless they are dropped. Sometimes your technician accidentally drop the metal sieve, so they can't be certain. So you have to do something. You have to verify again. Okay. So number 2 is about automatic replacement. Number 3 is about verification. Say every 6 months you can verify the fitness for purpose of, say, analytical balances. We are normally provided with this standard weight. So you measure the standard weight using the analytical balance. If it gives the right accurately the standard weight, say 10 gram, and then that balance is verified as accurate. Yeah, and then the record of this verification exercise must be retained. That's a key word. Alright, I want you to introduce this about documentation. In 2015 requires that you retain documented information or records. So this provides evidence on the fitness for purpose. When the auditors come in, they want to know whether you have done maybe verification, maybe you have done inspection, etc. So it becomes evident for fitness for purpose. You perform calibration, they will indicate fitness for purpose, right? It is a very expensive exercise. So whatever it is, you have to retain it as a record. You can justify your method later. So 7.5 standard talk about documented information. This is what I am trying to focus here. Document is living information. Records is historical information. So like just now you did your say verification of a particular instrument. You have to retain the documented information, that is records. Yeah. If however you have SOP, standard operating procedures, or we have done policies before, or you have a lots of other documents that is related to the quality management system, you need to maintain this. You are required to maintain this. They call it documented information as well. Here in record they say retain documented information as well. Yeah, but it is a records. So be very clear between document and records. So in document it is about living information used for decision making or performing tasks, and it is subject to revisions. But records, like your attendance to this class, you have the attendance list, you sign it, that indicate that whether your presence or you absent from the class. You cannot change that. Okay, that must be retained. In case you are not clear, I found out here in the grammar phobia, retain is keep in possession. That's it, you just keep it. But maintain means you preserve the document, you keep in existing state, uphold it and defend it. You defend your document. It's like SOP, you defend your SOP. Policy, you defend your policy. Affirm or assert, adhere or conform to. So it's like you develop something very, very serious. Maintain the documentation. Okay guys, thank you very much. So again, happy learning.